In the shadow of New Delhi, the gleaming city of Noida represented India's future. But between 2005 and 2006, in the working-class village of Nithari, children began to vanish. One by one, they disappeared without a trace, their families' pleas for help ignored by authorities who dismissed them as runaways. For 2 years, a silent terror grew in the cramped lanes where the poor lived and worked. Then, in the cold winter of December 2006, a municipal drain behind the affluent bungalow of a wealthy businessman revealed a secret of unimaginable horror: skeletons, skulls, and the dismembered remains of at least 19 people. The House of Horrors was discovered, and a story that would haunt a nation began to unfold. This is not just the story of a monstrous killer. This is the story of a nation's trust being shattered. It's an investigation into police apathy, a botched investigation, a media frenzy that created a convenient villain, and a 2-decade legal battle that ended not with justice, but with a terrifying unanswered question. If the men sentenced to death were acquitted, who really killed the children of Nithari? We are about to embark on a deep, definitive analysis of a case that shook the conscience of a nation. We will dissect the evidence, the confessions, and the systemic failures that allowed evil to flourish. If you believe in the importance of holding systems accountable, subscribe to True Crime Bharat and join us as we uncover the dark, unsettling, and unresolved truth of the Nithari Nightmare. The story of Nithari's public unmasking did not begin with a sharp police detective or a high-tech investigation. It began with the stench of death and the unyielding persistence of the powerless. By December 2006, the residents of Nithari village had been living in a state of quiet terror for 2 years. One by one, their children were disappearing. Payal, a 20-year-old, Pinky, also 20, Arti, just 7 years old. The list grew, a silent scream in a community of laborers, domestic workers, and rickshaw pullers. Each time a family approached the Noida police, their pleas were met with a wall of indifference. The official narrative was dismissive and cruel. The missing were not children, but young adults who had eloped, run away from home after fights, or left to find better financial opportunities elsewhere. The complaints were trivial, the families a nuisance. This apathy was not random. It was rooted in a stark social and economic divide. Nithari village was a cluster of humble dwellings, a world away from the manicured lawns and high walls of the adjacent Sector 31, a wealthy enclave. The lives of the poor unfolded in the shadow of the affluent, and their tragedies were invisible to the architecture of power. The police, it was later alleged, did not heed their complaints simply because they were poor. They lacked the money, the influence, the social capital to make their grief matter. This systemic neglect created a perfect hunting ground, a risk-free environment where evil could flourish, unchecked and unseen. Frustration turned to desperation. The father of one of the missing girls, Payal, refused to accept the police's narrative. His own investigation, born of a father's love, led him to suspect Surinder Kohli, the domestic servant at the imposing bungalow at D5, Sector 31, owned by a businessman named Moninder Singh Pandher. On December 29, 2006, after mobilizing other residents, a search began around the property. What they found in the municipal drain running behind the house was a scene from a slaughterhouse. Skeletons, skulls, bones wrapped in plastic bags. The drain, meant to carry water, was choked with the remains of their lost children. The news exploded. The House of Horrors was born. As the police, finally spurred into action by the public discovery, began to dig, the scale of the massacre became terrifyingly clear. More and more remains were unearthed from the backyard and the drain. A media firestorm descended on Nithari. The scene became a circus of chaos, with journalists, politicians, and onlookers trampling over the very ground that held the clues, contaminating a crime scene of unimaginable importance. Parents, clutching faded photographs of their smiling children, rushed to the site, their worst fears confirmed with every shovel of earth. The initial police apathy had given way to a national spectacle of horror, and public fury was about to boil over. At the center of this maelstrom were 2 men, whose names would be forever linked to the Nithari atrocities. Their contrasting profiles, one of wealth and status, the other of poverty and subservience, formed the core of the prosecution's narrative. Moninder Singh Pandher and Surinder Kohli. The investigation into the Nithari murders was not just flawed, it was, in the words of the Allahabad High Court, botched up from the very beginning. It stands as a textbook case of incompetence, tunnel vision, and a catastrophic betrayal of public trust. This failure was not the fault of a single officer, but a systemic collapse that tainted both the local police and the nation's premier investigative agency, the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI. The failures of the Uttar Pradesh police were immediate and glaring. For 2 years, they had engaged in criminal negligence by refusing to register missing person reports. When the remains were finally discovered by the residents themselves, the police failed to perform the most basic function of law enforcement, securing the crime scene. The financial cost of this initial incompetence would be magnified exponentially as the case proceeded. On January 7, 2007, bowing to immense public pressure, the case was transferred to the CBI. It was a move meant to restore faith, but the CBI compounded the errors. The entire prosecution case was built on 2 pillars, Kohli's confession and the recovery of the victim's remains. Both would crumble under legal scrutiny due to procedural flaws that rendered the evidence legally worthless. From the very beginning, a sinister alternative theory haunted the case, an organized organ trafficking ring. The methodical dismemberment of the bodies, with torsos often missing, pointed towards the systematic harvesting of organs for the lucrative illegal transplant market. This was bolstered by a witness testifying that a doctor in the house next door had been arrested years earlier in a kidney scam, yet this trail went cold. The Allahabad High Court later lamented that the investigation opted for the easy course of implicating a poor servant, without probing more serious aspects of possible involvement of organized activity of organ trading. The sensational cannibalism narrative provided a convenient narrative shield, a simple, monstrous explanation that deflected from a more complex and politically perilous investigation. The story so far reveals a catastrophic failure in the investigation, raising serious questions about competence and intent. Before we delve into the dramatic legal battles that followed, if you're finding this deep dive insightful, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us bring more critical stories like this to light. Now, let's enter the courtroom. The journey of the Nithari case through the Indian judicial system is a story of 2 starkly different worlds. The world of the trial court, swayed by public emotion, and the world of the appellate courts, guided by the cold, hard letter of the law. The initial trial proceedings were swift and severe. In an atmosphere of intense public revulsion, the court handed down the ultimate punishment, the death penalty. Kohli was sentenced to death in at least 12 cases, Pandher in 2. These verdicts were a reflection of the public mood, a satisfaction of the collective conscience of society. The turning point came in October 2023. The Allahabad High Court acquitted Kohli in 12 cases and Pandher in 2, delivering a devastating and systematic demolition of the entire prosecution case. The court's reasoning was clear: a botched-up investigation and inadmissible evidence. The recoveries were invalid, and Kohli's confession was deemed unreliable after claims of torture. The final act played out in July 2025. The Supreme Court of India dismissed the CBI's appeal, finding no perversity in the High Court's judgment and complimenting the judges for delivering a correct verdict despite media pressure. The acquittals were cemented in law. While Kohli remains in prison on a life sentence from a separate earlier conviction, Pandher walked free. The judiciary had corrected a legal wrong, but was powerless to remedy the human tragedy, upholding the process of justice while being unable to deliver its substance. The collapse of the Nithari prosecution has not brought closure. It has left behind a fractured landscape of doubt, anger, and profound, unsettling questions. A critical analysis argues that Surinder Kohli, a poor Dalit domestic worker, was deliberately crafted into a convenient villain. He was an easy scapegoat, a simple, horrifying answer to quell public outrage and mask the gross incompetence of the investigation. This narrative was fueled by a trial by media, where sensationalism and reckless reporting created an overwhelming public perception of guilt that prejudiced the proceedings. The legacy is a multifaceted failure. It is a damning indictment of the entire justice pipeline, from police apathy to a prosecution built on air. It has catastrophically eroded public trust. The case has also become a central exhibit for opponents of capital punishment in India, a stark reminder of the system's fallibility. But the ultimate cost is borne by the victims' families. After an 18-year ordeal, they are left with nothing. No justice, no answers, and a soul-crushing sense of betrayal. "We are poor and that's why we lost," one parent said. The ultimate legacy of Nithari is a state of justice paralysis. The system's internal contradictions and failures did not lead to an unjust outcome that could be corrected. They created a permanent void of truth. The legally sound acquittals did not restore clarity. Instead, they deconstructed the only official narrative without offering a replacement, leaving society with a more profound and disturbing uncertainty than before. Initially, a horrifying but coherent story existed. A monster was caught and would be punished. The legal process systematically dismantled this story piece by piece until nothing remained. But the judiciary's role is primarily deconstructive. It assesses the evidence presented and determines if it meets the high bar of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It is not equipped to go back in time and find the real story when the initial investigation was so fundamentally rotten. This has left a vacuum. The convenient villain is gone, legally speaking, but no alternative has been found. The organ trafficking theory remains a ghost, a tantalizing but unproven possibility. The families are frozen in their grief, and the public is left with the chilling realization that the system is not only capable of targeting the wrong person, but is also incapable of finding the right one after its initial failure. The question, who killed the children of Nithari, is now more unanswerable than ever. And that is perhaps the greatest horror of all. The trail is cold, the evidence is gone. The witnesses' memories have faded. The truth is likely buried forever under the weight of incompetence and indifference. This is not just a failure of justice, it is the active unraveling of the possibility of truth itself. The story of Nithari is a warning. It is a brutal testament to why citizens must demand accountability, competence, and fairness from their justice system. It shows how the lives of the most vulnerable can be devalued and how the institutions meant to protect them can become instruments of their suffering, first through apathy and then through a flawed and prejudiced pursuit of a convenient resolution. The financial and emotional cost of this failure is immeasurable. If this deep dive into one of India's most disturbing cases has been meaningful to you, please share this video to help raise awareness about the critical issues it exposes. And don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Bharat for more investigations that go beyond the headlines to seek a deeper understanding. Thank you for watching.